Good evening. As millions of pupils in England, Wales and Northern Ireland prepare to return to school for the first time in many months, the UK's most senior medical officers have emphasised the importance of doing so. In a rare joint call, they've said the risks of children staying out of the classroom far outweigh those of returning, and that the risk to teachers is in line with the rest of the working age population. Teaching unions have said a plan B is required in the event of outbreaks. With Scottish schools already back, Sarah Campbell reports.
For these Scottish pupils, it was a damp but welcome return to school for the new academic year. And today, there were reassuring words for the millions more across the UK who are about to go back to the classroom.
The chances of children catching COVID and then getting long-term serious problems as a result of it, solely due to going to school, are incredibly small. They're not zero, but they're incredibly small. The chances of many children being damaged by not going to school are incredibly clear, and therefore the balance of risk is very strongly in favour of children actually going to school.
More than 200 primary school pupils in Leeds will soon be heading back through these gates, and the head teacher here is among many listening very carefully to Professor Whitty's words.
I'm trusting his judgment and hoping that he's absolutely right in what he says. And I do agree that the children have had a difficult time for a long time now, for a good 6 months or so. They need to be back. They need us to look at what learning has been missed and what we need to catch up with.
Every trip into town, every visit to a museum now carries with it an element of risk. The people here today, clearly the parents, the carers, the families have decided, on balance, it's worth it. So what about going back to school?
I think it's really good for the children. They're both looking forward to going back and seeing the friends.
There's a wider implications on, vulnerable members of society, but certainly for Kitty, it's definitely the best thing for her to go back.
In his class, his year has been kept as one bubble. So yeah, I think they're doing everything that they can to keep us all safe.
Months of planning have gone into making schools as safe as possible, but teaching unions are concerned there isn't sufficient official guidance over what to do if an outbreak does occur.
I represent people who want to know the logistics. If a child is going to be sent home, we get public health advice. Are we told that some other children will have to be sent home? Might it be a whole year group bubble? Should those young people be in on rota type basis? All of those, it seems to me, are important questions.
Politically, after the exam chaos of recent weeks, children's education and well-being is top of the priority list.
We are left with a large number of situations where we have to make really quite difficult choices. There are no easy choices in confronting coronavirus.
And with no vaccine likely for many months, Professor Whitty's view is that it shouldn't be the schools which are closed. Sarah Campbell, BBC News.
Let's turn then to Westminster and Ian Watson, our political correspondent. This was the day when we heard from key government advisers. Ian, what about ministers? How much of a test will this be for them?
It's going to be a huge test to the government, Mishal, and potentially huge consequences for Boris Johnson if he fails, because the return to school, the partial return to school in England just before the summer, was patchy. Now Boris Johnson says it's full steam ahead for September. It's the priority of the whole government. But he has some potential problems down the line. There is a quiet confidence here that things will go a bit better this time because they're not expecting obstruction from the unions or from local councils. But the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, has said that the government has been distracted in the run-up to the return to schools because of a mess of their own making over exam results. And what he's trying to do is to establish a long-lasting impression in voters' minds that the government has been floundering on this issue and on other aspects of the coronavirus crisis. So the return to schools has to go smoothly for the government. Tomorrow, Boris Johnson is going to appeal directly to parents to send their kids back to school. His political credibility, the job of his education secretary, and of course the education of a generation of young people are all on the line.
Ian Watson in Westminster, thank you very much. And our medical editor, Fergus Walsh, is with me now in the studio. Fergus, how might the reopening of schools affect infection numbers?
Well, there is an expectation and inevitability that when children go back to school, that there will be a rise in cases. Now, it'll partly be due to children mixing in the classroom, but also a consequence of parents being able to go back to work. Now, with seasonal flu, children are regarded as super spreaders. They drive an outbreak, but that doesn't seem to be the case with coronavirus. Back in March, when schools were shut down across the UK, we were in a very different place. We knew less about the virus, and there was a fear that the NHS would be overwhelmed. But the number of people in hospital with COVID-19 has been falling for months and has been continuing to fall despite the easing of restrictions. You know, at one stage there were 3,200 COVID patients on ventilators in the UK. There's now 72. It's worth bearing that in mind with all the focus on case numbers. Chris Whitty thinks that there could be a tough autumn and winter ahead with renewed pressure from COVID. There might be the need for restrictions, but he clearly thinks that schooling and children should be safeguarded.
Fergus Walsh, thank you very much.